Close your eyes and let yourself drift backward through time, beyond the bustle of modern cities, past the glow of neon lights and the ceaseless hum of machines, into a quieter, slower rhythm of existence. Imagine a world before wallets and banks, before the counting of coins and the keeping of ledgers, a world where wealth was not measured in numbers but in trust, belonging, and the warmth of human connection. The story begins not in a place of chaos or struggle, but in a city where life unfolded without the presence of money, where every sound, every gesture, and every exchange carried with it a sense of harmony that feels both foreign and deeply familiar to us today. Picture yourself walking through narrow pathways lined with earthen walls, sunlight spilling across courtyards where neighbors gather not to sell but to share. Children chase one another with laughter that echoes off stone, their play unburdened by the concept of ownership or price. In the distance, a group of women kneel together, weaving baskets, their hands moving with the ease of countless generations. They are not thinking of selling these baskets for silver or copper coins. Instead, each finished piece will pass into the hands of another, perhaps exchanged for grain, or given freely as a gesture of goodwill. To live in such a place is to wake each day not with the anxiety of wages to earn, but with the quiet assurance that your place in the community secures your needs. The air in this city feels different. It is heavy with the scent of herbs drying in clay pots, the smoke of small hearth fires curling into the sky, and the distant sound of animals lowing in pens just beyond the walls. But more than these, it carries an invisible current, the calm certainty that one will not be abandoned, that hunger or cold will not isolate or destroy, because every person is woven into the fabric of the whole. This is not a utopia, not a dream without difficulty, but it is a place where survival is not dictated by the exchange of coins. It is a place where the human heart beats closer to the rhythm of nature, and closer still to the rhythm of trust. The contrast with the world we know today is stark. In our time, money is the foundation of almost every interaction. A simple loaf of bread requires a transaction, a number scribbled onto a receipt, and the movement of currency from one hand to another. In this city, bread does not begin with the ringing of coins. It begins with the farmer in the fields, planting seed with the expectation that harvest will feed not just his family but the community at large. It begins with the miller who grinds the grain, not for profit but because he too will receive what he needs when his turn comes. And it continues with the baker, whose warm, fragrant loaves are not commodities to be priced but gifts of nourishment shared openly. This gentle rhythm is unfamiliar to us, yet it is rooted in one of the oldest truths of humanity, that survival has always depended more on cooperation than competition. Walk a little farther in your mind, past the homes clustered close for warmth and safety, toward the heart of the settlement where people gather. Here, there are no stalls stacked with coins, no shouts of traders demanding payment. Instead, there is an exchange of smiles, of objects, of gestures of goodwill. A hunter lays down a bundle of meat, knowing it will be distributed where needed. In return, he will take home a jar of oil or a crafted tool, not because he bargained for it but because the system ensures balance. Every interaction is wrapped in the unspoken understanding that giving sustains life, and hoarding weakens it. The absence of money does not mean the absence of value, rather, it redefines value as something measured in relationships, generosity, and trust. If you pause for a moment and listen carefully, you may notice how quiet such a city feels compared to our own. Not silent, for the hum of daily life is everywhere, children giggling, animals stirring, the soft rhythm of a loom. But quiet in another sense, quiet because there is no clatter of coins, no endless calculation of gain and loss, no pulse of anxiety tied to numbers on a ledger. The silence here is the silence of minds at ease, of people who live within a structure that sustains them without the constant demand of payment. It is a silence that soothes, as though the entire city itself is breathing slowly, like a body at rest. This world without money is not one of abundance in the way we might imagine it today. There are no overflowing markets, no endless supplies of goods. Scarcity exists, as it always does. But the presence of scarcity does not transform neighbors into competitors. Instead, it makes them collaborators. When food runs short, families gather to share. When tools are scarce, they are lent and borrowed with trust. The fragility of life binds people closer, not further apart. And so, even in times of difficulty, the system endures, built on bonds stronger than currency. As you wander deeper into this imagined city, notice how your own body begins to feel. The constant pressure of modern transactions, the hidden weight of financial worry, seems to lift here. Instead, there is a sense of release, as though you too are part of this web of giving and receiving. You are no longer a solitary individual striving to accumulate. You are a member of something larger, your worth measured not by your possessions but by your presence, your willingness to contribute, and your capacity to trust. In this opening moment of the story, you are standing on the threshold of a forgotten possibility. The city around you hums with life, yet it lacks the currency that defines nearly every corner of our modern world. And yet, nothing is missing. People live, laugh, eat, and work. They raise children, build homes, and create art. They do so without the presence of coins, and perhaps because of that absence, their lives carry a kind of richness that feels rare to us now. The lesson is not merely historical, it is personal. It invites us to ask, what would it mean for us, today, to measure life not in money, but in connection? The journey has only begun. In the sections that follow, we will step deeper into the fabric of this city. We will trace its streets, enter its homes, and observe its rhythms. We will witness how a community without money thrived, how trust became its wealth, and how generosity wove its strength. But before we move forward, pause here a moment longer. Feel the air of this world around you. Let the absence of money sink into your mind like a gentle tide, washing away the noise of commerce. You are here now, in the opening gateway of a city that lived without money, a city that whispers across time that another way of living is not only possible but profoundly human. Imagine approaching the city at dawn, when the first light of morning stretches across the horizon and washes the earth in muted gold. The walls rise gently from the ground, not as towering fortresses of stone, but as extensions of the land itself, built from clay, mud, and straw. They are not meant to intimidate or divide, they are meant to shelter, to cradle the community inside like a cupped hand protecting a flame. As the sun climbs higher, its warmth glances off the surfaces of earthen homes, revealing the textures of hand-pressed brick, the imprints of palms and fingers left behind by the builders, as though every dwelling carries the memory of those who shaped it. This city is not a monument to conquest or wealth. It is a living place, grown slowly, carefully, from the soil beneath it and the hands of its people. Step closer and pass through the narrow entryway. The air inside feels immediately different. It is still, carrying the faint fragrance of wood smoke and the sharp tang of herbs strung to dry. The streets are not wide avenues but winding pathways, smooth from countless footsteps, each curve guiding you toward the heart of the settlement. Nothing here is grand in the sense of marble or towering spires, yet everything holds a quiet beauty. The geometry of the city is shaped less by design and more by need, homes clustered together for warmth, courtyards opened wide for gatherings, pathways bending to follow the rhythm of the land. In this way, the city feels both planned and organic, like a living organism breathing in unison with its inhabitants. Listen closely as you walk. You can hear the stirrings of life all around. A rooster crows from somewhere behind a wall. A pot clinks as it is set upon a hearth. A child's laugh carries on the air, followed by the gentle scolding of a mother reminding them of morning chores. There are no bells ringing to signal the opening of markets, no calls of merchants demanding payment. The rhythm of the city is slower, woven into the cycles of nature, the rising of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the needs of the community. This is not a place where clocks dictate hours or money dictates movement. Here, time flows more like water, bending and shaping itself to the patterns of daily life. As you wander further, the buildings reveal their quiet details. Low doorways open into rooms cool and shaded, lined with woven mats and simple clay vessels. Light filters through small windows, casting soft patterns on walls smoothed by hand. In some spaces, families gather around small hearths, the smoke curling upward and out through carefully cut vents. In others, work is already beginning. A potter kneads clay, his hands steady and sure. A woman grinds grain on a stone, her rhythmic motions steady as breathing. Each task is purposeful, but none is rushed. Life here does not chase the future, it rests fully in the present, in the work of the hands and the strength of the community. In the center of the settlement lies the gathering place, a wide open courtyard that serves as the city's heart. This is where people come together not only to exchange goods but to exchange stories, news, and laughter. It is here that children play freely, darting between adults who sit weaving, repairing tools, or preparing food. The air hums with conversation, but it is not the sharp edge of bargaining or the clash of competing voices. It is soft, steady, warm, a reminder that this is a community defined by belonging rather than by competition. The courtyard is not paved with stone or decorated with monuments. Instead, it is shaped by the footprints of countless gatherings, each one layering another memory into the earth beneath. Surrounding the city are its lifelines, the fields. Here, rows of crops stretch toward the horizon, their growth nurtured not by hired labor or financial contracts but by the hands of those who will one day share the harvest. Families work side by side, turning the soil, planting seed, drawing water from canals that shimmer in the light. The fields belong to no single person, they belong to all, and their bounty is gathered into shared stores to be distributed when needed. The cycle of planting and harvest ties the city not only to the earth but to one another. It ensures that no one stands apart, no one is left behind. To walk among these fields is to see the essence of this city: cooperation, survival, and care. The animals, too, are part of the scene. Goats wander near the edge of the homes, their bells chiming softly as they search for scraps of grass. Chickens cluck and scatter as children chase after them, their small feet kicking up dust. Oxen wait patiently by wooden plows, their great bodies steady and enduring, a reminder of the strength that sustains the fields. Even the animals here are part of the communal rhythm, their milk, eggs, and labor flowing naturally into the lives of the people. Nothing is wasted, nothing is hoarded. Each element of life, plant, animal, and human, is bound together in balance. There is something profoundly grounding about standing in this place. Unlike the towering monuments of empires or the glittering temples of kings, this city does not strive to overwhelm with grandeur. It offers instead a sense of intimacy. You are close to the earth, close to the people, close to the cycle of life itself. It is a city that asks you not to marvel at its size or wealth but to feel its spirit, to notice the simple beauty of clay walls warmed by the sun, of laughter drifting across courtyards, of bread baking in open hearths. Its power lies not in what it displays but in what it preserves, a way of living where survival is shared, where needs are met without the cold precision of coin. As you stand here and take it all in, you realize that the city is not extraordinary in the sense of riches or scale. It is extraordinary because it thrived without the structure we now consider essential. It is extraordinary because it shows us that human beings can build societies where trust, reciprocity, and presence replace the endless chase of profit. And it is extraordinary because, despite its age and distance, it speaks directly to the questions we ask even today. What does it mean to live well? What does it mean to belong? What does it mean to build a community not on money, but on connection? This is the scene, the setting, the world into which we will now journey more deeply. A city born of earth, shaped by hands, held together not by the binding force of currency but by the stronger threads of human trust. As you prepare to step further into its story, pause once more and breathe in the stillness of this place. Let the sounds, the smells, the textures linger in your imagination. For this city, though far from us in time, is not far from us in meaning. It carries within it a lesson, a whisper from the past, inviting us to see with new eyes the possibilities of life beyond money. To understand why this city blossomed without the invention of money, we must step even further back into the soil of its origins. Every society carries within it a story of choice, a series of paths taken and others left behind. In this place, the people chose a path that diverged from the course that so many other civilizations followed. While others began stamping metal into coins, tallying debts on clay tablets, and organizing life around trade and accumulation, this city built its foundation on trust, reciprocity, and communal survival. It was not simply that money was absent here, it was that it was unnecessary, even unwelcome. The city's heartbeat was measured in relationships, not in currency. The first families who settled this land were not rulers seeking conquest or merchants seeking wealth. They were people drawn to fertile earth, to rivers that fed the fields, to a climate that allowed crops to flourish. Their wealth was the abundance of the land itself, and their greatest treasure was one another. In these earliest days, survival demanded cooperation. Alone, a single family could not plow enough fields, could not defend itself from storms or hunger, could not preserve enough food for lean months. But together, they could endure. From this necessity grew a culture in which giving became instinctive, and where withholding could endanger not only oneself but the entire community. Sharing was not a virtue in the beginning, it was the condition of life itself. As generations passed, the habit of cooperation deepened into tradition. What began as a practical need slowly evolved into an identity. Children were raised with stories of ancestors who gave freely, who never allowed a neighbor to go hungry, who saw the strength of one as the strength of all. These stories became the threads of cultural memory, binding each new generation to the old, ensuring that generosity was not merely practiced but honored. In time, generosity became more than survival, it became sacred. Where other cultures minted coins stamped with the faces of kings, this society minted values stamped into memory, fairness, reciprocity, and belonging. It is easy to imagine how outsiders, upon first contact, might have found this strange. How could a city endure without currency? How could disputes be settled without prices and contracts? Yet to the people themselves, it was natural. The very idea of money would have seemed foreign, perhaps even dangerous, for it implied that relationships could be reduced to numbers, that the worth of a loaf of bread could be detached from the hands that baked it, that generosity could be replaced by transaction. To them, such thinking would have felt like an erosion of community, a way of weakening bonds rather than strengthening them. The structure of their society reflected this conviction. Goods were stored in communal granaries, overseen not by guards or treasurers but by trusted elders whose role was to ensure fairness. If one family had a poor harvest, the stores supplied them without question. If another family enjoyed abundance, they contributed more, knowing that in another year the roles might reverse. Balance was maintained not through calculation but through trust and memory. Everyone knew who had given, who had received, and who had stood by the community in times of hardship. Wealth was not hidden in purses or buried in jars but carried openly in reputation, in honor, in the stories others told of you. This way of life shaped even the smallest details of daily existence. When tools were needed, they were borrowed, with the understanding that they would be returned. When homes were built, neighbors came to help, confident that their labor would be repaid not with coin but with aid when their own walls needed raising. Even marriages were alliances of families, woven not through dowries measured in money but through promises of shared support, mutual respect, and future kinship. The very absence of money strengthened ties, for it required people to remain accountable not to numbers but to one another. One might think such a system fragile, vulnerable to abuse. What if someone took more than they gave? What if selfishness disrupted the balance? The answer lay not in written laws but in social memory. Every action was remembered, every exchange carried within the stories of the people. To take without giving, to hoard while others lacked, was to risk not only disapproval but isolation. Reputation was wealth, and to lose it was to become truly poor. In this way, generosity was not just encouraged, it was enforced by the invisible but powerful web of community judgment. To belong was to share, and to share was to belong. As the city grew, this ethos expanded. Trade with neighboring villages was conducted not with coins but with gifts and exchanges of necessity. A farmer might offer grain in return for pottery, a weaver might provide cloth in exchange for salt. These interactions were slow, deliberate, often accompanied by ritual or hospitality, for the act of exchange was never merely material. It was social, symbolic, even spiritual. The giving of an object was also the giving of goodwill, a gesture of trust that bound communities together. Money, in this context, would have felt like an intrusion, a way of stripping exchange of its human warmth. The land itself reinforced this system. The fields demanded cooperation, the rivers required shared management, and the harvests were unpredictable enough to remind everyone of their interdependence. Nature was the great equalizer, ensuring that no one family, no one individual, could stand alone for long. The seasons carved humility into the culture, teaching that abundance today could become scarcity tomorrow, and that only in unity could survival be secured. Out of this rhythm of the earth arose a rhythm of society. Give when you have, receive when you need, and trust that the cycle will hold. In time, this became not only a way of survival but a point of pride. To live without money was not seen as a deficiency but as a mark of wisdom. Outsiders might measure wealth in coins and treasure, but here, wealth was measured in trustworthiness, in the respect one commanded, in the love of neighbors. The people of this city carried within them a quiet confidence, a belief that they had chosen a path more enduring, more human, than the cold efficiency of currency. They did not long for coins or the systems they saw elsewhere. Instead, they looked upon them with suspicion, sensing that money, once introduced, would erode the very heart of their way of life. So it was that money never took root here, not because it was unknown, but because it was unnecessary and unwelcome. The people had chosen another measure of wealth, one that could not be clutched in the hand or locked away in a chest. Their measure was trust. Their coin was generosity. Their treasure was the community itself, bound together in a web of reciprocity that stretched across generations. In this, they were not merely surviving, they were thriving, building a society whose strength lay not in possessions but in people. As you stand now within the story of this city's origins, you begin to understand why money had no place here. It was not that the people lacked the imagination to create it, nor that they lived in ignorance of other systems. It was that they recognized a deeper truth, that the greatest wealth lies not in gold or silver but in the bonds that tie us to one another. This truth, simple and profound, was the seed from which their entire society grew. And from this seed blossomed a city whose memory still speaks across the centuries, inviting us to imagine what might be possible if we too measured wealth not in money, but in connection. Imagine the day when the city awakens to the sound of gathering feet, the air alive with the anticipation of exchange and sharing. It is market day, though here the word market carries a meaning very different from the one we know. There are no stalls crowded with prices scribbled on parchment, no shouts demanding payment in coins, no anxious counting of earnings at the end of the day. Instead, the marketplace is a living circle of trust, a place where people come not to bargain but to connect, where the rhythm of life itself is expressed through giving, receiving, and sharing. As the first light of morning spills over the rooftops, people begin to arrive. Families walk together, children darting ahead with laughter as they run between baskets and bundles. Farmers carry sacks of grain across their shoulders, the rough cloth bulging with the weight of harvest. Shepherds arrive with the lowing of goats or sheep, their animals jingling with small bells that sound almost like music. Craftsmen lay down their wares, clay pots with smooth curves, woven mats patterned with care, carved wooden tools polished by hand. The square fills not with noise but with a low hum of voices, the steady pulse of a community gathering in harmony. Look closely and you will see how each exchange begins. A woman approaches a farmer with a small basket of dried herbs, their fragrance rising in the air. She offers them with a smile, and the farmer responds with gratitude, placing a measure of grain into her empty basket. No one pauses to ask how much the herbs are worth. The worth lies in their usefulness, in the relationship between giver and receiver, in the trust that balances today's giving with tomorrow's receiving. Both walk away not as seller and buyer but as neighbors whose bond has been strengthened by the act of sharing. Elsewhere, a potter kneels beside his stack of clay jars. A young man approaches, carrying a bundle of firewood bound tightly with rope. They exchange greetings, then kneel together as the wood is laid down and a jar is lifted into the young man's arms. No coins pass between them. Instead, there is a moment of recognition, the understanding that each has something the other needs, and that through exchange both are enriched. The jar will carry water for the young man's family. The firewood will warm the potter's home. In this simple trade, both families are sustained, and a small thread is added to the fabric of community trust. The air of the marketplace is thick with scents, the sweetness of fruit, the earthy tang of vegetables pulled fresh from the soil, the smoky aroma of bread baked at dawn. You hear the gentle murmur of voices, the laughter of children weaving between baskets, the clatter of pottery as it is lifted and admired. Yet through it all there is no sharpness, no tension of bargaining, no voices raised in dispute. The rhythm is softer, steadier, as though each person has come not to win or profit but to participate in a ritual that is as old as the city itself. This marketplace is more than a place of exchange. It is a place of meeting. Elders sit at its edges, their eyes watchful, ready to guide fairness if needed. Storytellers move among the people, weaving small tales that entertain children while parents trade goods. Musicians strike gentle notes on simple instruments, their songs drifting through the air like threads of memory. Here, trade is not separate from culture. It is woven into the very act of living, a celebration of interdependence. To walk through the market is to see not only goods changing hands, but trust, kindness, and kinship passing invisibly between people. It is important to notice how fairness is maintained. Without coins, without numbers, how is balance ensured? The answer lies in memory, in reputation, in the shared understanding of reciprocity. Everyone knows who gives freely, who contributes generously, and who takes without returning. Those who live honorably find themselves surrounded by goodwill. Those who hoard or exploit find themselves quietly set apart, their isolation a subtle but powerful reminder of the value of generosity. Thus, fairness is enforced not by law or contract, but by the invisible weight of community trust. To betray that trust is to cut oneself away from the circle. Watch as a feast begins to take shape. Families contribute small portions of what they have, a basket of fruit here, a jar of honey there, a freshly baked loaf of bread laid gently among the others. Children dart back and forth carrying handfuls of food, arranging them on a large mat spread across the earth. Soon, the mat is covered with offerings, a shared meal born from countless small gifts. No one counts how much each family contributes. No one measures their portion. All know that the meal will nourish everyone present, and that next time, the sharing will continue. In this, the marketplace becomes not merely an exchange of goods but a celebration of abundance, a reminder that together there is always enough. Notice also the absence of haste. In markets driven by money, time is often an enemy. The more quickly you sell, the more profit you can make. The longer you wait, the more you risk losing. But here, time flows differently. A potter may sit half the day before all his jars are gone, yet he does not worry, for he knows they will find their way into homes where they are needed. A farmer may return with some grain still untraded, yet he is at peace, for he knows tomorrow will bring another opportunity, and the community will ensure no one is left without. The marketplace is not about maximizing gain, it is about sustaining balance. It is not about the accumulation of wealth, it is about the continuation of life. As you walk through this market in your imagination, you begin to feel a subtle shift within yourself. The constant calculation of cost and worth, so ingrained in our own world, begins to fade. You stop wondering how much the jar is worth in coin, or whether the herbs were traded for enough grain. Instead, you begin to see value in a different way, in the smile exchanged during the trade, in the gratitude that lights a person's eyes, in the knowledge that what you give will come back to you, perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but inevitably, because the circle of trust holds strong. This way of seeing value feels both unfamiliar and deeply comforting, as though you are remembering something you once knew but had long forgotten. By evening, the marketplace begins to quiet. Families gather their bundles, children clutch their treasures, animals are guided back toward their pens. The square slowly empties, leaving behind the echoes of voices and the faint scent of bread and herbs lingering in the air. What remains is not simply the memory of goods exchanged, but the memory of a day spent together, of bonds renewed, of community strengthened. The market has served not only as a place of trade but as a heartbeat, pumping life into the veins of the city. As you step away from this scene, reflect on the profound difference between this marketplace and the ones we know today. Here, there are no losers and winners, no competition or greed. Here, there is no need to guard one's wealth or fear another's gain. Instead, there is a shared recognition that life itself is the wealth, and that the only way to preserve it is to preserve one another. This city, in its market without coins, shows us that exchange can be more than transaction. It can be relationship, memory, celebration. It can be, quite simply, the art of living together. And so the day ends, and the marketplace fades into evening stillness. But its essence remains, etched not only into the lives of the people but into the story of humanity itself. For in this city, long ago, people discovered that wealth need not be counted in coins. It could be measured instead in trust, in generosity, and in the unbroken circle of giving and receiving that bound them together. This was the marketplace without coins, the true heart of a society where money never took root. In the quiet heart of this city, exchange was never only about survival. Beneath the surface of every traded jar, every basket of grain, every woven cloth passed from hand to hand, there lay something deeper, something sacred. For the people who lived without money, to give and to receive was not a mere transaction, it was a spiritual act, a way of affirming life, of binding themselves not only to each other but also to the unseen forces that watched over them. When a farmer placed a measure of grain into the basket of another, he did so not only to feed a neighbor's family but also as an offering to the spirit of abundance that made the earth fruitful. When a potter exchanged a clay vessel for firewood, he did not see it simply as a trade of labor for need. He saw it as a reminder that the earth had given them both clay and wood, and that in honoring this exchange, they honored the earth itself. To give was to recognize the gifts already received. To receive was to acknowledge the trust of another soul, and by extension, the trust of the divine. At the center of the city stood not a palace of rulers, but a sacred space, a temple or sanctuary, simple in form yet rich in meaning. Here, offerings from the market often found their way. A portion of grain, a jar of honey, a woven cloth laid reverently before the altar. These gifts were not demanded as tax or payment. They were freely given, symbols of gratitude to the unseen powers that govern the cycles of life, the sun that ripened the fields, the rain that nourished the soil, the wind that carried seeds across the earth. Each offering was a prayer, each prayer a recognition that exchange itself was divine. Consider the festivals that marked the turning of the seasons. In these moments, the act of giving and receiving reached its highest expression. Families gathered in the market square, not only to share food and stories but to create rituals of abundance. Grain was scattered upon the earth, not as waste but as a sacred gesture, a way of returning to the soil a portion of what it had given. Fires were lit, and the smoke carried prayers upward, rising like invisible threads that connected the human heart to the sky. Music and dance filled the air, yet beneath the joy there was reverence. Every loaf of bread shared, every cup of wine passed from hand to hand, was an act of communion, not just with one another, but with the universe itself. To live without money meant to see wealth not as something hoarded, but as something that flowed. Just as rivers flowed to the sea, just as rain fell upon the fields, so too did gifts flow from hand to hand, never meant to stop in one place for long. The people believed that when you held too tightly, when you grasped too greedily, the flow stopped and life itself grew stagnant. Generosity was not simply a virtue, it was a spiritual necessity, the only way to keep the circle of abundance unbroken. And so, every act of exchange became a kind of prayer, a way of keeping life in motion. Stories passed down through generations taught this truth. One tale spoke of a man who tried to keep all he had, refusing to give to neighbors, clutching every grain of wheat for himself. In the story, his granaries filled to bursting, but the grain turned sour, riddled with rot, until even his own family went hungry. Only when he opened his doors, sharing freely with those in need, did his harvest grow fresh again, the rot vanishing as though it had never been. Such stories were not told merely to frighten. They were reminders that life thrived in generosity and decayed in selfishness. The people also believed that ancestors walked among them, unseen but present, watching the choices of the living. To give freely was to honor those ancestors, to show that their teachings had not been forgotten. A shared meal was more than nourishment for the body, it was nourishment for the spirit, a way of including the living and the dead in the same circle of care. Sometimes, a portion of food was left untouched at a meal, set aside for those ancestors, a silent acknowledgement that the chain of giving extended backward through time as much as it extended forward into the future. Even the smallest exchanges carried this sacred weight. A child who handed a flower to an elder was not just offering beauty, they were learning the rhythm of life, the way that small acts of giving shaped the soul. An elder who accepted that flower was not just receiving, they were blessing the child with the unspoken promise that generosity was never lost, that every gift found its way back in another form. These tiny exchanges, woven into daily life, built the foundation of a culture where spirituality was not confined to temples or ceremonies, but lived in every moment. At night, when the market fell silent and families gathered by firelight, the songs sung often carried this theme. They told of rivers that gave water without asking, of trees that bore fruit without demanding coin, of stars that gave light without ever dimming their glow. These songs reminded the people that the universe itself was built upon generosity, that every breath they took was a gift, every sunrise a blessing freely bestowed. To live in harmony with that truth was to live without the weight of money, without the illusion that wealth was something separate from life itself. This spiritual view of exchange gave the people a serenity unfamiliar to us. In our world, we often measure life in terms of profit and loss, counting wealth as though it could be separated from the soul. But in this ancient city, life was measured in trust, in connection, in gratitude. Each gift was more than an object. It was a reminder of the unseen bonds that held the world together, the quiet assurance that what was given would return in time, transformed but intact. In giving, they touched the eternal. In receiving, they honored the sacred. And in living this way, they created a city where wealth was not counted in coins but in blessings. Thus, the marketplace and the temple were not separate. The act of trading a jar for firewood, a loaf for honey, was itself a sacred ritual. The lines between the practical and the spiritual blurred, until life itself became a prayer of gratitude, a circle of giving and receiving that mirrored the cycles of earth and sky. This was the spiritual dimension of exchange, the invisible thread that bound the city together, stronger than stone walls, richer than gold, eternal as the stars. Dawn in the ancient city begins not with the clinking of coins, nor with the rush of men hurrying to count their profits, but with the softer rhythms of life itself. The sun spills its first light across rooftops of clay and stone, warming walls that have seen countless mornings. Birds stir in the trees at the edge of the settlement, their calls drifting lazily into the streets where the first figures begin to appear. The city wakes slowly, unburdened by the calculations of money, carrying instead the quiet assurance that life is sustained not by wealth hoarded, but by the trust and labor shared among neighbors. Step into the home of an ordinary family, and you will see how their day begins. The father may rise early to tend to a small garden plot outside the dwelling, loosening soil with his hands, checking the growth of beans or herbs. The mother kneels by the hearth, stirring embers back into flame, placing a clay pot filled with grain and water so that a warm porridge will greet the family at breakfast. Children, still sleepy, stretch and laugh as they help fetch water from a nearby stream, the clay jars cool and heavy against their shoulders. There is no rush to earn, no scramble to chase wages. Instead, the rhythm of life follows the cycle of need and contribution. Everyone plays a role, and every role matters. When breakfast is shared, it is simple but nourishing. A bowl of porridge passed hand to hand, sweetened perhaps with honey from a neighbor's hive, accompanied by fruit traded in yesterday's market. Conversation drifts easily. Talk of who needs help repairing a roof, whose goats will be sheared for wool, what festivals approach on the horizon. Each word is spoken with the quiet knowledge that these tasks will be met not through payment, but through hands extended in friendship and obligation. The children eat quickly, eager to run into the day, while the parents linger a moment longer, sharing both food and unspoken gratitude. As the sun climbs higher, the city comes alive with the quiet hum of work. Farmers move to their fields, their tools handmade but sturdy, their steps sure across the earth. Some walk together, exchanging stories while planting side by side, knowing that the harvest will feed more than just their own families. Potters sit at their wheels, their fingers smoothing clay into shapes that seem to flow from the earth itself. Weavers sit in shaded courtyards, their looms clicking softly, threads of color forming patterns as steady as the beating of a heart. Carpenters repair tools or shape beams for a new home, their labor guided not by contract but by friendship, knowing that when they, too, need help, the circle of aid will return to them. In this city, a person's worth is measured not by coins in a purse but by the memory of their contributions. The farmer who shares grain with a neighbor in need carries respect in every handshake. The potter who gifts an extra jar to a struggling family earns not profit but trust, a currency far stronger than silver. Even the children learn early that their small tasks, carrying water, gathering herbs, tending animals, are threads in the great weave of community. No task is seen as beneath another, no contribution ignored. Life flows evenly because everyone understands that without giving, there can be no receiving. Midday arrives, and with it comes the sound of laughter drifting from shared meals. It is common for families to sit together outside their homes, bowls passed in circles, stories told between mouthfuls. A family that has more than enough shares with one that has little, not as charity, but as part of the natural rhythm of life. Today I give, tomorrow I may need, is a phrase often spoken, a truth so deeply understood that it requires no explanation. The bonds of kinship extend beyond bloodlines, neighbors become as close as family, their lives woven together in trust. Children roam freely through streets that feel less like pathways of commerce and more like veins of community. They play games, chase each other through courtyards, or sit by elders to listen to stories of ancestors and old festivals. Through play, they learn sharing and fairness. Through stories, they absorb the values that guide their people: generosity, humility, the understanding that to hoard is to weaken, while to give is to strengthen. Childhood here is not a time of striving for advantage but of learning to belong, to see oneself as part of something greater. By afternoon, the market becomes lively once more. Families bring what they have: baskets of figs, bundles of herbs, jars of fresh yogurt. Exchanges unfold without rush or calculation. A woman offers wool spun from her goats, receiving in return a clay jug to hold the milk her children will drink. A young man with a surplus of fish from the morning's catch trades with a baker for loaves of bread still warm from the oven. Every transaction is a reminder that life is a circle, and that what leaves one's hands today will find its way back tomorrow in another form. There is a kind of freedom in this, the freedom of knowing that you are never alone, that your needs are never yours alone to bear. As evening draws near, the city slows again. Farmers return from the fields, their tools carried home over their shoulders. Craftsmen sweep dust from their workshops, storing away the fruits of their labor until the next day. Women prepare meals, sometimes for their own families, sometimes for gatherings that include neighbors and friends. The scent of food fills the air, mingling with the soft smoke of hearth fires. Children's laughter fades into quieter tones as they gather close to their parents. Meals are shared once again, but now with a gentler pace, as stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. After supper, families often gather outside, beneath the vast dome of night. Elders tell stories that carry the wisdom of generations, their voices slow and soothing, their words painting pictures of times when ancestors first settled here, when the first seeds were planted, when the first jars were shaped from clay. Music drifts from simple instruments, a flute carved from wood, a drum made from stretched hide, their notes blending with the night sounds of insects and distant animals. Children fall asleep with their heads in parents' laps, soothed by voices that weave together history, myth, and the comfort of belonging. In this rhythm of daily life, the absence of money is not a burden but a release. No one rises each day in fear of debts unpaid, no one scrambles to earn coins at the expense of their peace. Instead, life is grounded in mutual care. Needs are met not because one can afford them, but because one is part of a community that does not allow its members to fall. Security lies not in wealth stored in chests but in bonds woven through countless acts of giving and receiving. The people of this city are rich not in coins, but in trust, memory, and the knowledge that their place in the world is secured by the very act of belonging. And so night falls, the city quiet once again beneath a blanket of stars. In every home, families sleep knowing tomorrow will bring the same steady rhythm: work given freely, food shared generously, stories told with reverence. Life here flows without the clatter of coins, without the cold arithmetic of profit and loss. It flows instead with the warmth of connection, the certainty of trust, and the eternal truth that wealth is not what we keep for ourselves, but what we share with one another. This is daily life without currency, not empty, not lacking, but full, steady, and rich in ways our own world has long forgotten. As the seasons shift, the city marks the passage of time not with calendars or coins, but with festivals, moments when the rhythm of daily life slows and the community comes together in celebration of abundance, unity, and the invisible threads that bind them all. These gatherings are not simply for entertainment or ritual. They are living lessons in reciprocity, an affirmation that life is not meant to be hoarded but shared, and that the true wealth of the city lies in the strength of its bonds. Imagine approaching the central square as the first festival of spring begins. Colorful banners sway gently in the breeze, dyed with pigments made from earth, flowers, and seeds, each hue carrying meaning and memory. The air is rich with the scent of bread baking in communal ovens, of honey stirred into sweetmeats, and of herbs that promise vitality and renewal. Families arrive carrying offerings, baskets of grain, bundles of vegetables, jars of oil, or handmade tools. These gifts are laid upon long mats that stretch across the square, creating a mosaic of abundance and generosity. No one counts who gives the most, no one measures profit. The act of giving itself is the festival's heartbeat. Music begins softly at first, a flute, a drum, a stringed instrument plucked gently, and grows as more hands join in. Children run freely between the adults, their laughter mingling with the melodies, their small feet stirring dust in playful spirals. Elders sit at the edges, their eyes twinkling with memories of festivals long past, each one a thread in the tapestry of tradition. They offer guidance when needed, but mostly they observe, witnessing the magic of generosity flowing like a river through the city. The festival is as much about presence as it is about celebration. To participate is to immerse oneself fully in the life of the community. At the heart of the festival lies the ritual of shared meals. Families arrange their offerings in communal feasts, placing each item with care, knowing that all will be eaten together. Loaves of bread are passed hand to hand, jars of honey opened for everyone to taste, vegetables arranged in patterns that delight the eye as much as the palate. Children help in the preparations, learning from their parents that feeding another is an act of both kindness and responsibility. The elders tell stories as the meal progresses, tales of ancestors who planted the first seeds, of the first gifts shared, of the times when trust and generosity saved the city from scarcity. Each story reinforces the lesson that abundance grows not from taking, but from giving. Games and competitions follow, but they are unlike contests driven by greed or ambition. They are designed to build collaboration, to celebrate skill without fostering envy. Teams work together to carry water, to stack grains, to weave mats as quickly and beautifully as they can. Laughter echoes across the square, mingling with cheers and claps, but never with anger. Even in playful rivalry, the spirit of unity remains unbroken. Every participant understands that the joy of the festival lies not in victory but in participation, in contributing one's gifts to the collective experience. During these festivals, exchange takes on a heightened significance. A potter may give his finest jar to a neighbor who has struggled during the winter. A weaver may offer a beautifully patterned cloth to a family who recently suffered a poor harvest. Each act is more than charity, it is a public reaffirmation of trust and reciprocity. The city is reminded that abundance is not permanent, and that prosperity is strongest when shared. To witness these gestures is to feel a quiet, profound awe. Here is a society where generosity is both natural and celebrated, a society where the flow of giving is central to life itself. As evening descends, torches are lit, casting a soft glow across the faces of those gathered. Music swells and dances begin, the movements slow and deliberate, designed to include all rather than impress any. Children follow their parents' steps, elders sway gently, and everyone feels the pulse of the city in their own body. The night sky, unobscured by smoke or artificial lights, spreads vast and dark above them, dotted with stars that seem to echo the lights below. The city and sky become mirrors of one another, the human circle reflecting the infinite cycles of nature. It is in these moments that the spiritual dimension of exchange becomes palpable. Giving and receiving, feeding and sharing, dancing and celebrating, each act is layered with meaning. People feel themselves connected not only to each other but to generations past and future. They understand, in a way we rarely allow ourselves to remember, that their lives are part of a larger whole. The festival becomes both a reflection and a reminder of the invisible web of life that sustains them, the land, the animals, the ancestors, and each human soul participating in the circle. By the time the festival winds down, a quiet peace settles over the city. The mats are rolled away, the leftover food shared among families, the instruments stowed with care. People walk slowly back to their homes, hearts full, bodies tired, but minds calm and grateful. The lessons of the festival, generosity, trust, community, linger long after the laughter fades. In these celebrations, the city has not only shared resources but strengthened the bonds that make survival possible. Each festival reinforces the understanding that life without money does not mean life without structure, richness, or joy. On the contrary, it is a life deeply ordered around the most human of currencies, connection. As you imagine yourself here, participating in one of these gatherings, you begin to sense the extraordinary depth of the city's social fabric. Money is absent, yet abundance is everywhere. Scarcity may exist, but it is balanced by generosity. Differences between families, between households, between individuals, are not erased but harmonized through shared purpose and ritual. In every laugh, every bite of bread, every note of music, there is evidence that the city thrives not because of wealth, but because of unity. The festivals of sharing and unity are both a mirror and a heartbeat, revealing the city's true power and sustaining it across generations. In this way, the festivals are far more than celebrations. They are the city's moral compass, its memory bank, and its spiritual anchor. They remind every participant that wealth is not in hoarding but in giving, not in profit but in presence, not in isolation but in the endless flow of community life. They are a living testament to a society that has found a path radically different from our own, a society where money never took root, yet life flourishes in ways that feel, even across centuries, profoundly human. In this city without money, the transfer of knowledge is as natural and vital as the passing of water through the rivers that nourish its fields. Education does not begin and end in formal buildings with fees and tuition. It begins in the home, in the streets, in the marketplace, and in the workshops where hands and minds meet in the quiet rhythm of learning. Every child grows up knowing that their greatest inheritance is not gold or silver, but the wisdom, skills, and stories of those who came before them. From the moment they take their first steps, they are part of a culture of sharing, where learning is a communal endeavor and every person has something to teach, just as every person has something to gain. The day begins with children gathering around elders, listening with rapt attention as they recount tales of ancestors, the founding of the city, and the cycles of nature that sustain life. These stories are not merely entertainment, they are lessons in ethics, in survival, and in cooperation. They teach children how to plant crops, repair tools, care for animals, and navigate the complexities of social life. With each story, children learn the subtle values of reciprocity and generosity. They absorb, almost unconsciously, that knowledge is not a possession to hoard but a gift to pass forward, that the act of sharing information strengthens the entire community rather than diminishing the individual. Practical skills are taught alongside stories, woven seamlessly into daily life. In a workshop or courtyard, a young apprentice kneels beside a master potter, their hands moving together as clay is shaped into vessels. The master does not ask for payment, the teaching itself is the reward, and the continuation of knowledge is the wealth gained. In the fields, older children work alongside farmers, learning not only how to sow seeds but how to read the clouds and the wind, how to anticipate drought, how to celebrate an abundant harvest with gratitude. In weaving courtyards, small fingers mimic the movements of experienced hands, learning patterns and techniques that have been perfected over generations. Every moment of guidance, every patient demonstration, is a testament to a society where skill is valued above material wealth. The marketplace, too, becomes a classroom. Here, children observe exchanges, noting how elders judge the quality of goods, how subtle gestures communicate respect, and how decisions are made based on fairness and need rather than profit. They learn not only about craftsmanship and barter but about human relationships, the invisible codes that bind the community. Questions are encouraged, curiosity celebrated. When a child asks why a certain grain is offered freely rather than kept, or why a gift is given without expectation, the answer is always rooted in the city's fundamental principles: trust, reciprocity, and interdependence. In this way, education is not confined to books or classrooms, it is an immersive experience, inseparable from the lived reality of the city. Elders play a crucial role in preserving both practical knowledge and cultural memory. They mentor, correct, and guide, ensuring that wisdom is not lost to time. They teach agricultural techniques, the preparation of medicines from herbs, methods of food preservation, and the shaping of tools. Equally important, they convey the lessons embedded in the city's history, the choices that led to a society without money, the consequences of generosity and selfishness, the delicate balance between survival and community. In their presence, children and adults alike understand that education is a lifelong pursuit, not a brief phase before entering a labor market. Knowledge, like trust, flows continuously, connecting generations. The exchange of skills is reciprocal. Just as children learn from elders, adults often learn from one another, and occasionally from children themselves. A young apprentice may invent a new tool or method, offering it freely to the community, and in doing so contributes to the collective intelligence of the city. Knowledge is not hoarded or patented, it is celebrated in public demonstrations, shared openly in workshops and homes. The culture values innovation, but only when it is integrated into the life of the community, when it enhances survival and strengthens trust rather than fostering competition or individual gain. Apprenticeships are not formal contracts, nor are their fees. Instead, they are rooted in relationships and responsibility. A student shows dedication through consistent effort, through willingness to learn and to contribute. In return, they receive guidance, mentorship, and the practical skills necessary to participate fully in the community. Mistakes are expected and treated as part of the learning process, not as failures to be punished. There is no shame in not knowing, there is only opportunity to learn and share. In this, the city cultivates humility alongside competence, ensuring that knowledge is always accompanied by respect. Education also extends to moral and social understanding. Children are taught that the worth of a person is measured not by what they possess, but by what they contribute to the community, by the integrity of their actions, and by the depth of their care for others. Disputes are resolved not through payment or fines, but through dialogue, mediation, and the guidance of respected elders. By observing and participating in these processes, young people internalize the values that sustain the city. Learning here is holistic, encompassing both practical skills and the softer, yet equally vital, skills of empathy, collaboration, and ethical reasoning. In this city, the boundary between teaching and living is blurred. Every task, every conversation, every act of giving is imbued with potential for learning. When a family shares food, knowledge is shared as well, recipes, methods of preparation, and the wisdom of when and how to harvest. When a craftsman repairs a tool for a neighbor, he passes along techniques that will endure for generations. When an elder tells a story of ancestors, the lessons embedded in it shape the moral compass of the listener. Life itself becomes an ongoing classroom, and every individual participates both as student and teacher. By evening, as families gather around the hearth, learning continues in quieter, reflective ways. Children retell stories they have heard during the day, testing memory and comprehension. They practice the skills observed earlier, tying knots, shaping clay, or tending small animals, under the gentle supervision of parents or elders. Music and song often accompany these activities, reinforcing rhythm, language, and cultural memory. Even rest is considered part of the learning cycle, for observation and reflection are as essential as active practice. The city recognizes that true education nourishes the mind, the body, and the spirit in equal measure. In this way, the city thrives not only because it shares goods and resources but because it shares knowledge, skill, and wisdom across generations. Education is inseparable from community, from the rhythms of daily life, from the flow of trust and reciprocity that defines existence here. It is holistic, immersive, continuous, and untainted by the need for payment or profit. Every individual grows in competence, in character, and in connection, ensuring that the city remains resilient, cohesive, and capable of thriving across time. In a world without money, the true currency becomes knowledge itself, freely exchanged and endlessly multiplied. In a city without money, governance does not rely on power, coercion, or wealth. There are no taxes, no officials enforcing contracts for coin, no armies to collect dues. Instead, the city thrives through the quiet authority of trust, consensus, and shared responsibility. Leaders emerge naturally, not because they own more, but because they inspire respect through wisdom, fairness, and the example of their deeds. Governance is woven into the fabric of daily life, not imposed from above, and justice is measured not by penalties or fines, but by balance, restoration, and the enduring bonds that hold the community together. At the center of the city stands a council of elders, selected for their experience, insight, and proven dedication to the well-being of the people. Their role is not to rule but to guide, to mediate disputes, and to ensure that fairness is maintained. They listen carefully, weighing the perspectives of all parties, and often encourage those involved to seek reconciliation before rendering any decision. Authority here is quiet and persuasive, rooted in trust earned over a lifetime rather than in the possession of material wealth. The citizens follow these leaders because they have demonstrated their understanding of both the law of community and the rhythms of life itself. Justice in this society is deeply relational. When conflicts arise, whether over property, livestock, or misunderstandings between neighbors, resolution is sought through dialogue and communal reflection. Each participant is given the opportunity to speak, to explain their perspective, and to acknowledge the impact of their actions on others. The process is slow, deliberate, emphasizing understanding over punishment. The goal is not to impose retribution but to restore balance, to repair relationships, and to ensure that all feel heard, respected, and included. In this, the city recognizes that law is not only a set of rules but a living practice of harmony. A common method of conflict resolution involves mediation by a respected elder or council member. The mediator listens to the story of each party, asks questions to uncover underlying needs, and helps them arrive at a solution that acknowledges fairness and the interconnectedness of the community. Sometimes the resolution involves practical compensation. A neighbor helps rebuild a damaged fence or repairs a broken tool. Sometimes it is symbolic, a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a shared meal to restore trust. In every case, the aim is to heal, not to punish, and to strengthen the invisible web of obligations and goodwill that sustains the city. Interestingly, the absence of money transforms the very nature of disputes. In societies dependent on currency, disagreements often revolve around ownership, debt, or profit. Here, conflicts arise from miscommunication, misunderstanding, or breaches of trust. This subtle difference changes how justice is perceived. Rather than a zero-sum game, it becomes a cooperative effort to maintain equilibrium. Citizens do not seek advantage over one another, they seek restoration of harmony, guided by the principle that the health of the community is more important than the satisfaction of individual desire. Transparency is another key element of governance in this city. Decisions are not hidden behind locked doors or decrees. Meetings of elders are often open, and their reasoning shared with the community. People understand that rules and norms exist not to restrict them but to protect the collective well-being. Even young members of the society are included in discussions, observing the processes of negotiation and compromise, learning that governance is a skill built through dialogue, empathy, and patience rather than coercion or wealth. In this way, the city cultivates a culture of accountability and active participation, ensuring that citizens feel empowered rather than subjugated. Laws themselves are simple, grounded in principles rather than lengthy statutes. They emphasize fairness, generosity, and responsibility, reflecting the city's foundational belief that the community thrives when each member acts with care and consideration. Theft is rare, for the culture instills respect for others' needs and for the value of shared resources. Violence is uncommon, for disputes are resolved through conversation and mediation. Social memory, the collective recollection of actions and behaviors, serves as a powerful deterrent against harm, as anyone who consistently violates the trust of others risks not only disapproval but isolation from the community itself. Elders also oversee communal resource management. Shared granaries, water sources, and tools are maintained collectively, ensuring that every household has access when needed. Rules regarding their use are taught from childhood. Take only what is needed, return borrowed items, contribute what you can. Governance here is inseparable from daily life, a constant, gentle framework that encourages responsibility while fostering freedom. Citizens understand that the well-being of each individual is tied to the well-being of all, and that the health of the city relies upon cooperation and vigilance rather than monetary enforcement. Ceremonial practices further reinforce justice and governance. Festivals, communal meals, and public gatherings often include symbolic reaffirmations of values. Elders remind citizens of the principles that guide the city: fairness, generosity, reciprocity, and care for one another. These rituals are not superficial, they are integral to the ongoing education of the populace, teaching young and old alike that laws are living agreements sustained by shared belief and consistent practice. In this way, governance is as much about culture and morality as it is about rules and procedures. By nightfall, when the city quiets and families retreat to their homes, a sense of calm permeates the streets. Governance has done its work not through coercion, but through trust, dialogue, and the steady reinforcement of shared values. Disputes that arose during the day have been resolved, relationships repaired, and the invisible threads of reciprocity woven tighter. Citizens rest with the quiet assurance that their community is just, not because it is policed, but because it is built upon the enduring principles of fairness, mutual care, and collective responsibility. In this city without money, governance and justice are inseparable from the culture of trust and exchange. They are not abstract systems imposed from outside. They are lived, breathed, and practiced daily. Authority derives from wisdom and example, disputes are resolved through dialogue and restoration, and the health of the community is paramount. By nurturing relationships, maintaining transparency, and teaching moral responsibility from generation to generation, the city ensures that life flows smoothly, that conflict rarely escalates, and that all citizens understand the profound truth that justice is not a reward or punishment, but the ongoing harmony of a community united in trust and care. Even in a city where money does not exist, conflict is inevitable. Differences in opinion, misunderstandings, and occasional mistakes arise among neighbors, families, and friends. Yet, the nature of these conflicts is shaped by the unique values of the community. Without the distortions of greed or the pressure of financial gain, disputes are more subtle, often arising from competing needs, unspoken expectations, or the natural friction of human interaction. The approach to resolving them, however, reflects a society profoundly committed to harmony, where the primary aim is not punishment but restoration. Imagine a situation where a farmer unintentionally damages a neighbor's fence while bringing in a herd of goats. In many societies, the immediate reaction might be anger, lawsuits, or demands for compensation. Here, however, the response is different. The community gathers, not to assign blame, but to understand the circumstances. The farmer explains what happened, while the neighbor shares the impact on their property and daily life. Elders may listen, asking questions that illuminate perspectives both obvious and subtle. The focus is on understanding, not scoring points or asserting authority. In this gentle process, all parties begin to see not only their own interests but also the web of interdependence that binds them together. Resolution often begins with dialogue, guided by those with experience and wisdom. Mediators do not impose decisions. Instead, they facilitate conversation, helping individuals articulate their feelings and needs. They encourage empathy, prompting the parties to consider how their actions affect the wider community. Solutions frequently involve practical acts, repairing the fence together, sharing resources to cover temporary losses, or collaborating on tasks that restore balance. These actions achieve more than compensation. They reaffirm relationships, rebuild trust, and strengthen the social bonds that make the city resilient. In essence, resolution is as much about restoring connection as it is about correcting error. The city also relies on rituals and traditions to reinforce social cohesion. Certain acts, such as shared meals, public acknowledgements of goodwill, or communal celebrations, function as both symbolic and practical repairs of relationships. When a conflict arises, participating in these rituals reminds individuals of their shared values and the responsibilities they bear toward one another. It signals that reconciliation is not just a private matter but a communal concern, and that harmony is everyone's responsibility. In this way, cultural practices and conflict resolution are intertwined, creating a society where morality, justice, and tradition reinforce one another continuously. Education plays a subtle yet essential role in preventing and resolving conflict. From an early age, children are taught principles of fairness, empathy, and reciprocity. They learn that actions have consequences, not as threats, but as natural results of interaction within a community. They observe adults navigating disputes calmly, listening attentively, and offering help when needed. Through stories, games, and practical experience, they internalize strategies for peaceful resolution and learn to value cohesion over dominance. By the time they reach adulthood, these lessons are deeply embedded, shaping behavior in ways that support collective stability without coercion or financial incentive. Even larger conflicts, those that might arise between families or entire neighborhoods, are approached with the same emphasis on dialogue and restoration. Meetings convene all involved parties, often in the presence of respected elders. Discussions proceed slowly, ensuring every voice is heard. Compromises are negotiated, often involving shared labor, the exchange of resources, or joint participation in communal tasks. These solutions may take time, but patience is considered an essential virtue. The city recognizes that hasty decisions often sow resentment, whereas deliberate, inclusive problem-solving fosters understanding, trust, and cohesion. Time itself becomes an ally in the resolution process. Social cohesion is further reinforced through the network of mutual obligations embedded in daily life. Families and neighbors remember past acts of generosity, noting who consistently contributes to communal well-being. This social memory guides behavior, ensuring that those who violate trust face subtle but effective consequences: isolation, diminished influence, or gentle correction. Conversely, those who uphold communal values are respected, supported, and valued. In this way, the city cultivates a culture where behavior is continuously guided by shared principles rather than imposed laws, creating an environment where cooperation is not optional but natural. The absence of money amplifies the city's reliance on social bonds to resolve conflict. Without financial leverage to manipulate or coerce, individuals depend on reputation, respect, and empathy. Power is measured not in wealth but in wisdom, fairness, and the ability to maintain relationships. Even minor infractions are addressed with the understanding that everyone's actions ripple outward, affecting the lives of many. This awareness nurtures self-regulation, teaching citizens to anticipate the impact of their behavior on others and to act responsibly within the shared space of the community. Festivals and communal gatherings also play a subtle role in reinforcing cohesion. They are opportunities for individuals to reaffirm connections, celebrate collective achievements, and publicly acknowledge the values of trust and reciprocity. By participating in these shared experiences, citizens internalize the importance of collaboration and the rewards of harmonious living. Even the simple act of preparing for a festival, sharing food, decorating public spaces, and coordinating activities strengthens relationships, creating bonds that buffer against potential conflicts. Social cohesion is not imposed, it is cultivated through continuous, immersive practice. In moments of tension, the city relies on storytelling as a tool for reflection and resolution. Elders recount past conflicts, illustrating how careful dialogue, patience, and generosity restored harmony. Children and adults alike learn from these narratives, internalizing strategies for resolving disputes and recognizing the consequences of self-centered behavior. The stories remind the community that conflicts are inevitable, but their outcome depends on the commitment to mutual care and understanding. By framing conflict as a natural, manageable part of life, the city reduces fear, encourages empathy, and reinforces the social contract without formal enforcement. By the end of the day, after disputes have been resolved and relationships restored, the city moves forward with a sense of continuity and calm. Citizens sleep knowing that their community is resilient, that misunderstandings are temporary, and that the bonds connecting them to one another remain strong. Life continues, daily routines resume, and the rhythm of giving, learning, and collaboration carries on, uninterrupted by lingering tension or unresolved grievance. Conflict, in this society, becomes not a source of fear, but a reaffirmation of the power and necessity of social cohesion. Thus, in a city without money, the cycles of conflict and resolution are integral to maintaining harmony. Disagreements are approached with empathy, mediated by wisdom, and resolved through collaborative action. Social cohesion is nurtured through ritual, education, memory, and daily interactions, creating a resilient society where trust, respect, and interdependence are stronger than any material wealth. In this way, the city thrives, demonstrating that human communities can flourish not through coins or contracts, but through patience, understanding, and the continual weaving of relationships that bind them together in shared life. In the city without money, art and music are not luxuries or commodities, they are essential threads in the fabric of life. From the earliest moments of childhood, citizens are immersed in a culture that honors creativity as much as survival. Songs are sung at dawn while fetching water, rhythms accompany work in the fields, and stories fill the evening hours with lessons, wonder, and reflection. Art, music, and storytelling serve multiple purposes. They educate, entertain, connect, and preserve memory, forming a subtle, continuous language that strengthens both individual and community. Imagine walking through the market in the early morning. Musicians play soft flutes and percussion instruments made from wood, clay, and animal hide. Their melodies drift through the streets, mingling with the scent of fresh bread and the chatter of families. Children listen attentively, learning not only the notes but the stories embedded within the music, tales of ancestors, of the first settlers, of miraculous harvests and acts of generosity. Even adults hum the tunes, passing them on to neighbors, ensuring that each melody becomes part of the shared consciousness of the city. Music is a living history, a memory carried in sound, accessible to all, free of cost, and infinite in its reach. Visual art also thrives here, though not as a commodity to be bought or sold. Clay figurines, murals on walls, and woven textiles tell the stories of the people and the land. A simple wall painting in a communal space may depict a festival, showing families exchanging food, children playing, and elders guiding with gentle hands. Every brushstroke or carved pattern communicates values: generosity, cooperation, respect for the environment, and reverence for ancestors. Art is a communal language, simultaneously practical and symbolic, enriching daily life while preserving collective memory. In this society, to create is to participate in the life of the city, and to observe is to learn. Storytelling is perhaps the most treasured form of artistic expression. At night, when the sun has set and families gather around hearths, elders recount tales that blend history, myth, and moral guidance. These stories are more than entertainment, they are lessons embedded in narrative form. They illustrate the consequences of selfishness, the rewards of generosity, and the complex interplay of individual and community. Children and adults alike are mesmerized by the rhythm of words, the cadence of voice, and the vivid imagery painted by language. Storytelling serves as both education and cultural preservation, ensuring that knowledge, values, and traditions are never lost to time. Music, art, and storytelling also serve a therapeutic purpose. They provide solace after hard labor, a moment of reflection when difficulties arise, and a means of expressing emotions that cannot be fully captured by words alone. A song might honor a lost friend or celebrate a newborn, connecting private feelings to the collective experience of the city. Murals and woven designs offer comfort through familiarity, reinforcing continuity and stability. Stories remind citizens of resilience, teaching that challenges are natural and can be overcome through wisdom, cooperation, and patience. In this way, the arts maintain emotional balance, nurturing both the individual spirit and the communal heart. Collaborative creation is common. Festivals and communal gatherings often involve the entire city in artistic expression. Children contribute drawings, adults add woven patterns, and musicians improvise melodies that accompany dances and ceremonial acts. The resulting performance or display is a tapestry of collective creativity, showcasing both skill and unity. Participation reinforces the values that sustain the city. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits, and the richness of the final work is magnified because it belongs to all. Art and music are not judged by monetary value but by the depth of connection and shared experience they foster. Even the simplest objects carry artistic meaning. A clay jar may be etched with symbols denoting the family who created it, patterns that tell a story or honor a season. A woven mat may incorporate colors and designs that commemorate historical events or seasonal cycles. These objects are used daily, yet they continually remind citizens of the beauty, history, and shared knowledge that surrounds them. In this society, functional items and artistic expression are inseparable, and everyday life is a gallery of lived experience. The arts also reinforce social cohesion. Songs of harvest, communal dances, and storytelling circles strengthen bonds, teaching empathy and understanding through shared experiences. When a conflict arises, music and storytelling are often invoked to reflect on the consequences of past actions and to guide the community toward resolution. They act as emotional bridges, linking individuals across differences, reminding all that they share a common identity and purpose. In a city without money, the currency of art, song, and story becomes a vital medium of trust, morality, and continuity. By encouraging creativity, observation, and reflection, the city ensures that knowledge, emotion, and cultural memory circulate freely. Artistic practices are part of education, part of governance, part of ritual, and part of daily life. They create a rhythm, a shared pulse, and a narrative structure that holds the community together. Even in quiet moments, the hum of remembered songs or the mental image of a mural reminds citizens of their interconnection, their responsibilities, and their place in a lineage that stretches across generations. Through art, music, and storytelling, the city achieves a balance of intellect, emotion, and spirit. They are the invisible threads that link education to daily life, work to celebration, and individual experience to communal identity. Each song sung, each mural painted, and each story told reinforces the values that sustain life without money: trust, generosity, reciprocity, and respect for both nature and fellow humans. In this way, the creative arts are not decoration, they are vital infrastructure, as essential to the city's well-being as water, food, and shelter. Ultimately, the role of art, music, and storytelling in this society is to create meaning, transmit knowledge, and cultivate harmony. They are the heartbeat of the city, the medium through which values are communicated and preserved, the tool that nurtures imagination, reflection, and connection. In a place where coins have no power, these cultural expressions ensure that life is rich, education is continuous, and community bonds remain unbroken. They remind every citizen that in a world without money, the most precious treasures are not material, but the shared stories, melodies, and images that define and unite them. Even though money does not exist within the city, trade with neighboring settlements still occurs. But the currency here is not coin or metal, nor even a standardized measure of goods, it is reputation and trust. Across borders, families and communities have learned that reliability, integrity, and generosity are more valuable than silver or gold. A city's standing, the willingness of others to engage in exchange, and the confidence that agreements will be honored become the invisible currency that sustains long-distance trade. These principles extend the lessons of the city beyond its walls, creating networks of cooperation that reach far and wide. Imagine a caravan preparing to leave for a neighboring town. It is laden not with bags of coin, but with jars of preserved grain, bundles of cloth, handcrafted tools, and pottery. The families entrusted with this trade are chosen not only for skill and diligence but for their reputation for honesty and fairness. Each member knows that the success of the exchange depends entirely on their behavior, on careful handling, accurate accounting, and respectful negotiation. Mistakes or misrepresentation could not only damage a single transaction but also harm the city's standing, making future trade more difficult. In this way, trust becomes the lifeblood of commerce, more critical than the material goods themselves. At the trading destination, relationships are built and maintained through consistency, reliability, and generosity. A potter who delivers high-quality jars on time gains the confidence of buyers. A farmer whose grain is pure and abundant earns a reputation that travels faster than any messenger. Even a small gesture, offering a gift of surplus produce or assisting in the construction of shared infrastructure, strengthens bonds and ensures that future exchanges will be welcomed. Reputation, carefully cultivated, becomes a powerful form of capital, circulating among communities and creating long-lasting networks of mutual support. In negotiations, the tone is calm and deliberate. Offers are made openly, questions asked honestly, and disputes resolved immediately through discussion rather than confrontation. The goal is not to maximize profit but to ensure that both parties emerge satisfied and confident in the reliability of their counterparts. Agreements are often sealed not with signatures or contracts, but with public acknowledgement, shared meals, and symbolic gestures that communicate mutual understanding. These practices instill a sense of accountability far deeper than any written law could enforce. To be trusted is to hold power, to betray trust is to lose it, with consequences that ripple across the region. Trade journeys themselves are opportunities to extend knowledge, skill, and culture. Travelers carry with them not only goods but stories, songs, and ideas. A caravan may introduce new techniques in pottery, weaving, or agriculture learned in the home city. In exchange, they acquire innovations from other communities, creating a continuous flow of knowledge that enriches both societies. Here, trade is inseparable from education, art, and cultural exchange. It is not a transactional interaction in the conventional sense but a holistic experience, linking people and places through shared values and mutual respect. Young apprentices often accompany trade caravans, learning practical skills and the subtle art of negotiation through observation and participation. They witness firsthand how trust is earned, maintained, and sometimes lost. They see the care required in handling goods, the patience necessary to resolve disagreements, and the importance of cultivating goodwill. These experiences prepare them to contribute meaningfully to both local and regional commerce, ensuring that the values of the city, honesty, fairness, and reciprocity, extend beyond its borders. Reputation is not inherited automatically, it is cultivated through consistent action and integrity. Even when external markets bring challenges, scarcity, bad weather, or occasional dishonesty from outsiders, the city's reliance on trust proves resilient. Citizens understand that setbacks are part of the natural flow of life. When a shipment is lost or delayed, neighbors support one another, pooling resources and adjusting expectations. Lessons are shared openly, mistakes analyzed calmly, and improvements implemented collectively. Through these experiences, the concept of reputation deepens. It is not only about individual behavior but about the collective reliability of the community as a whole. A city that consistently honors its word becomes a beacon of trust, attracting partners who value integrity above all else. Trade also reinforces internal cohesion. Families entrusted with important tasks feel a sense of responsibility not only to their own household but to the entire city. Their reputation reflects on the broader community, encouraging careful attention, diligence, and collaboration. By linking external reputation to internal behavior, the city ensures that all citizens act in ways that strengthen both local and regional networks. Trust is both a personal and communal asset, carefully nurtured through day-to-day actions, long-distance exchange, and consistent ethical conduct. In this system, wealth is measured not by accumulation but by reliability, respect, and relational capital. Communities evaluate one another based on character and consistency, not on numerical tallies of coins. Agreements are fulfilled because honor is considered more binding than law, and long-term relationships are valued above immediate gain. Even small gestures, sharing surplus produce, assisting with repairs, offering guidance, are remembered and become part of the city's enduring reputation. Across generations, this moral and social capital forms a network stronger than gold, sustaining both trade and trust. By nightfall, returning caravans carry not only the goods of distant lands but the stories, songs, and wisdom they have gathered along the way. Their successful journeys reinforce the city's standing and provide models of behavior for others. Families recount tales of fair negotiations, challenges overcome, and lessons learned. Children listen with wide eyes, absorbing both practical knowledge and the moral underpinnings of reputation-based exchange. Through these narratives, the principle becomes clear. In a world without money, character, reliability, and mutual respect are the currency that ensures survival, prosperity, and continued connection. Trade beyond the city illustrates that a society can thrive and maintain complex relationships without traditional money. Reputation and trust function as living, dynamic currencies, binding individuals and communities across distances. They encourage ethical behavior, reward diligence, and reinforce social cohesion. They transmit culture, knowledge, and values, ensuring that every exchange is not merely about goods but about sustaining the invisible, enduring network of trust that defines the city. In this way, the city's principles extend far beyond its walls, proving that wealth is not measured in coins but in the integrity and generosity that people carry wherever they go. The city without money stands as a quiet testament to what human society can achieve when cooperation, trust, and shared responsibility are placed above profit. Its legacy is not found in coins or monuments but in the enduring principles that guide its citizens: generosity, reciprocity, and a profound respect for the interconnectedness of life. As we reflect on this remarkable society from the vantage of our modern, fast-paced world, its lessons are both timeless and urgent, offering insights into how communities might thrive when they prioritize relationships over wealth, learning over accumulation, and care over competition. At the heart of the city's enduring success lies the idea that wealth is not measured in material accumulation but in the depth of human connection. Families and neighbors cultivate bonds that extend across generations, ensuring that knowledge, skills, and values are passed down reliably. Every action, from tending a field to sharing a meal, from teaching a child to resolving a dispute, contributes to a living network of trust and reciprocity. The result is a society that is resilient, adaptive, and capable of flourishing without the crutch of currency. In a world where financial wealth often dictates opportunity, the city reminds us that social and moral capital can be equally, if not more, powerful. Education, skill sharing, and mentorship are central to this legacy. Children grow up immersed in practical knowledge, moral lessons, and cultural memory, guided by elders who see teaching as a responsibility rather than a transaction. Every generation emerges equipped not only with the tools needed for survival but also with an understanding of ethical behavior, empathy, and cooperation. Adults, too, continue learning through observation, dialogue, and active participation. In this way, education becomes a lifelong process, and knowledge becomes a shared, dynamic resource rather than a commodity to be hoarded. Modern societies, often focused on standardized testing and credentialing, could learn from this model that learning thrives most effectively when it is immersive, communal, and purpose-driven. Another enduring lesson is the city's approach to governance and justice. Without money, the community depends on the quiet authority of trust, consensus, and shared responsibility. Leaders emerge based on wisdom and respect, not wealth or coercive power. Disputes are resolved through dialogue, empathy, and collaborative problem-solving rather than fines, imprisonment, or bureaucratic procedures. This approach ensures that relationships remain intact, social cohesion is strengthened, and every citizen understands the moral and practical implications of their actions. For modern societies grappling with inequality and punitive legal systems, the city demonstrates that fairness and justice can thrive when the focus shifts from punishment to restoration. Conflict, too, is viewed not as a threat but as an opportunity for growth. Misunderstandings are addressed through conversation and mediation, allowing communities to emerge stronger and more resilient. Rituals, communal activities, and storytelling reinforce cohesion, creating a culture where disputes are seen as natural, manageable, and even valuable for reinforcing shared values. In a modern context, this suggests that conflict need not be destructive if approached with empathy, patience, and structured dialogue. Societies today could benefit from prioritizing restoration and connection over adversarial confrontation, learning that social bonds are a critical component of long-term stability. The city's approach to trade and interaction beyond its walls also offers profound insights. Without currency, reputation, trust, and reliability function as living forms of capital. Agreements are honored, partnerships flourish, and knowledge and culture are exchanged freely. The emphasis on integrity over profit encourages sustainable practices and long-term cooperation, contrasting sharply with contemporary systems where short-term financial gain often drives decision-making. Modern societies, especially in global commerce, could draw lessons from this approach. Relationships, trustworthiness, and ethical consistency can create more enduring prosperity than material accumulation alone. Perhaps most striking is the city's integration of art, music, and storytelling into daily life. These cultural practices are not decorative luxuries. They are tools of education, emotional well-being, and social cohesion. Songs, murals, and narratives transmit values, preserve memory, and strengthen community bonds. They provide solace, guidance, and reflection, demonstrating that creative expression is a central pillar of societal health. In a modern world where entertainment is often monetized and commodified, the city shows that creativity flourishes most fully when it serves a collective purpose and is accessible to all. The legacy of this city also challenges contemporary notions of success and ambition. Here, fulfillment is derived not from accumulating wealth but from contributing meaningfully to the well-being of others. Every individual's actions ripple outward, influencing the health, happiness, and resilience of the community. By orienting life around contribution rather than extraction, the city cultivates a sense of purpose and belonging that transcends material limitations. In today's societies, where individual achievement and consumption often overshadow communal responsibility, this model offers a radical reminder that human thriving depends on the balance between self-interest and collective care. The city's enduring wisdom also lies in its ecological sensitivity. Without the pressure to exploit land or resources for profit, citizens develop practices that are sustainable, adaptive, and deeply attuned to the cycles of nature. Agricultural techniques, resource sharing, and communal maintenance of water, tools, and infrastructure ensure that scarcity is minimized and environmental health is preserved. Modern societies, grappling with climate change and resource depletion, could learn from these practices. Aligning human activity with natural cycles and communal stewardship fosters resilience and long-term abundance. As generations pass, the city's principles perpetuate themselves. Knowledge, art, governance, and trust circulate freely, creating a self-reinforcing system of stability and growth. Every citizen, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, contributes to a continuous chain of learning, care, and cooperation. In this way, the city offers a vision of what is possible when social, moral, and cultural capital are prioritized over financial accumulation, and when communities value relationships and shared responsibility as the foundation of existence. Ultimately, the legacy of this city is both practical and philosophical. It demonstrates that money is not a prerequisite for thriving, that human ingenuity, empathy, and collaboration can sustain complex societies, and that happiness, security, and fulfillment are grounded in connection rather than possession. It invites modern societies to reconsider the metrics of success, the nature of wealth, and the values that underpin collective life. By looking to this city, we glimpse a society where human potential is realized not through competition or accumulation, but through trust, generosity, and the quiet, enduring power of shared responsibility. As you reflect on the city, imagine its lessons seeping into contemporary life. Consider communities where relationships are prioritized over transactions, education is immersive and continuous, conflicts are addressed through empathy and dialogue, and creative expression is a shared, vital resource. Picture a world where trade is guided by trust and reputation rather than profit, where governance rests on respect and consensus, and where every individual understands the ripple effects of their actions. The city without money offers not just a historical curiosity, but a blueprint for living that is as relevant today as it was centuries ago. Through its legacy, the city whispers a gentle but profound truth: wealth measured in kindness, knowledge, and trust endures far longer than coins, contracts, or material accumulation. Societies that cultivate connection, integrity, and generosity build systems that sustain themselves across generations. By learning from this remarkable civilization, modern humanity can aspire to create communities that are not only prosperous but humane, resilient, and deeply connected, societies where life flourishes not despite the absence of money, but because of the richness of shared human values.